It's a very violent scene. We were rehearsing. It's hysterical, and I'm kind of screaming, and there was this pounding on the door, and some neighbor had heard us and called the police. So we looked out the window. We were scared to death. A cop car, 2 cop cars had pulled up, and so I thought, oh, this is the power of acting. King Kong is my first IMDb credit. I was taking acting classes in New York. I was working as a waitress at the Lion's Head. I had gone to see a modeling agent in hopes that maybe I could supplement my waitress income, but I was never very successful at modeling. But the woman there, the agent, knew that I was serious about acting. When she was contacted by De Laurentiis, she thought of me. I arrived in LA, and suddenly I'm driving through the gates of MGM, which is like my childhood studio. You know, that everything about MGM fascinated me. And they took one look at me and they weren't interested at all. Completely not the type he was looking for. But since they had flown me out there, they agreed to at least put me on camera. I think the second AD showed up to just say roll it. So I did the scene, and then he asked me if I'd like to do another one. So I did another one. Then he said, why don't you just wait a bit? Pretty soon then the AD came on the set and he ran a few takes, and then they called the director to come. So then the director showed up and I did a few more scenes, and then they called the producer. And De Laurentiis came to the set, and by the time I left that afternoon, I had the part, you know. I mean, it was like one of those crazy, hard-to-believe stories, but that's how it happened. I think because I was so inexperienced, and it was the first time I was in front of cameras, it didn't seem bizarre to me that I was sitting in some big hydraulic hand, you know, and playing scenes to blue screen or green screen and, you know, no other actor. So at that point it was better than being a waitress. That's all I could keep thinking, is this is a little more interesting than going to the Lion's Head every night. Not too much, but a little bit.
Now, that's what I call a real drinker's nose.
And you should know because you're a real drinker, aren't you, Joe?
Yeah.
Also heavy into speed, aren't you?
Yeah.
Also sleep with a great many women.
Real turn-off, huh?
Just the opposite.
Bob Fosse directed all that jazz. Bobby was a really dear friend, and he actually recognized something of my talent that nobody else did at that time, or very few people, because, you know, after doing King Kong, it was kind of just like, she's not really an actress or whatever. There wasn't much to take away from that experience. But Bobby, yeah, I mean, he really wanted me to work, and he wanted to create this character for me. So he was shooting all that jazz and had been shooting a long time. I think they were way over budget and over a schedule, because my scenes as the Angel of Death were to come at the very end of the shooting schedule. They told him that they were going to shut down, and he really, really went to bat to get those scenes that I was in shot. So he was just a really dear friend, very loyal and fiercely supportive. So yeah, that was basically my second part, you know, my second role. Everybody was fabulous. I mean, Roy Scheider and you know, all the actors that were in it. I'm the only character in it that doesn't sing or dance. So, I mean, I thought, well, okay. I mean, not that I could sing. I could dance a little, but I certainly couldn't sing. But I thought, this is an odd character, you know, in the midst of this whole kind of musical milieu to be. But I understood what he was going for. I mean, it was classic Bobby, wasn't it? You know, a beautiful young woman comes to gather you up when your time is done. The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Say you won't leave me, please.
The idea that I was like a newcomer, and suddenly I was being directed by a great director like Bob Rafelson and working with this extraordinary actor, Jack Nicholson. And it did a lot just for my whole way of seeing and thinking of myself as an actor. And both of them were so incredibly generous to me for all of that. And, you know, as you can imagine, working with Jack is a lot of fun. And we had a great time doing it. Thinking back on that time, it was like something there really opened up for me as an actor. It was the first time I had been given the kind of part that felt like maybe I was a dramatic actress and that this was something I could pursue and want to pursue.
You were gonna leave me.
Sorry, this note.
What are you writing me a thank you note?
I learned a lot from watching Jack work because he always had a sense of camera that was kind of uncanny. It wasn't the kind of acting that I had studied in acting class, obviously. That was something new to me, that it was specific for the camera, how you created your performance. I'd never even thought in those terms really before. It's a classic story. I mean, James M. Cain, you know? I mean, his stories were always sex and death and opera, and I would have been insane not to do that part. I mean, there would have been no reason in hell not to take that role. I think more than anything, it was the beginning of the way I work. It was the beginning of finding the emotional life and working from there.
You gotta go back there and tell them to let me out. 'Cause I'm ready. I'm ready to get out now. So you go back in there and you tell them that you're gonna let me out of here.
Francis, I'm warning.
No, I'm warning you.
Yeah, Graham Clifford was the editor of Postman Always Rings Twice. And when he decided to direct the film, he thought immediately of asking me to play Francis. Which is interesting because years before, when I was taking acting classes in New York with Warren Robertson gave me the book, Will There Really Be a Morning, which was Francis's autobiography, and said, you should find some scenes in here to do for class, because this was a scene study class. You know, I did. I found some excerpts of things to do in class, and a couple years later, this movie comes to me of Frances Farmer. I mean, I didn't have to think twice about doing it. It was, I knew I could do it and that it would change my life doing it. And it kind of did. It, you know, suddenly I was considered, really for the first time, a real actress. I wanted to do it because I knew it would be one of the greatest roles I'd ever play. And the idea of exploring madness is something that has always fascinated me, that idea of somebody who is living on the edge. And the relationship with the mother, and the fact that after I talked to Graham about it, he said, I'd like to offer this part to Kim Stanley. Well, Kim Stanley has always been, to me, the greatest actress ever. There's nobody that compares to Kim Stanley. So the idea that I could play this role with this actress and tell this story was, you know, it was like a gift from the gods. And it turned out that way, really. It was.
For her riveting portrayal of the beautiful but tortured actress whose star was a comet that burned out too soon, Jessica Lange in Francis.
You're always yourself, and I'm grateful to you. But, well, I just can't see you anymore. No.
I work in a very similar way that Kim worked. There was no protective coating. It was wild and it was raw, and the crazier it was, the better it was, especially for this part. So I think Kim recognized that. So she said to me, the best thing you can do is do a comedy next. You know, out of the blue, I got a call from Sidney Pollack and Dustin Hoffman, and there was Tootsie. It was an extraordinary time. Francis and Tootsie, and it was a banner year. It was a good year. It was a really, really good year. I won an Oscar for Tootsie, and a couple years later, I won an Oscar for Blue Sky. Well, it just validated the fact that people recognized that I could do it, that I did a good job. The script was brilliant. It was funny, it was smart, it was an extraordinary vehicle for Dusty. And I give Sidney Pollack total credit for creating that role. He really saw something in it and brought it forward. And it's funny and it's touching. And I mean, again, I think Sidney Pollack is one of the genius directors. I was so lucky to be able to work with him on that. Sometimes I'm watching television at night or something and it comes on, and that scene, it just plays so beautifully, and the way he let the camera follow us as we walked away, it says everything about that relationship, and it's hopeful and it's sweet and it's tender.
Stop!
Yes, Lee?
Listen to me, Max. Listen to me. You know, Max, since all this started, I've thought about you all the time. I've tried to imagine what it must have been like for you all those years locked up in jail.
Well, first of all, I mean, that was one of those moments where, you know, when I was talking to Marty and he came to see me about doing this part, I thought, well, this is a done deal. I'm going to work with Martin Scorsese at least once in my career. I want to work with this brilliant man. I loved working with Marty because he has an enthusiasm that's almost childlike. His love of film and the process is so contagious. I'm sorry that I've only had one, opportunity to work with him. The scene where my character that I play, Lee, is trying to bargain to not abuse her daughter, to not assault her daughter, but to take her instead, begging him to leave her daughter alone.
I want you to do it just with me, not with her, because we have this connection.
That's one of those scenes where you do your homework and you've got the lines, you know what is expected, but something then explodes in the moment of doing it. For me, that's always the thrill of acting, where you don't set things ahead of time. With that scene, it really was some kind of explosion. It's so emotionally powerful that it kind of sweeps you along with it. I loved that scene. I loved playing that scene. It was a great project. It was. I really enjoyed doing it. I wish the opportunity to do something like that would come up again.
Dance the waltz! How can you resist it? How can you resist that?
The director, Michael Tootsie, again asked me to do it, and of course I didn't give it a second thought. Big Edie, are you kidding? And the way he had designed the story, that we would actually go back and tell some of the early stuff to portray their early lives. Because as you know, in that brilliant documentary, you're just in the house with these women in this period of time at the end. But Michael's script takes us through those previous years to kind of see how this all came about. I remember working with my singing coach, and we were getting ready to pre-record T for Two. And he said, now, I don't know, do you want to, do anything different with it? And I thought, oh, no, I want to do it beat by beat, breath by breath, exactly as she did it, because you could never in a million years improve on Big Edie singing Tea for Two. And the way I found into her character every day was listening to her voice. And I would come into the trailer in the morning and I would put on the DVD. It was an interesting process because I would hear her voice and I would listen to it and I would listen to it and I would listen to it. And then suddenly I'd feel as though something had like settled down and that I could, that I had the character. I loved her. She's one of those characters, you know, you can look back in your whole canon of work and you can say, there were characters I really fell in love with. Frances Farmer, obviously, Patsy Cline, Blanche Dubois, Mary Tyrone, Edith Beale. You know, there are some that you just, they mean so much to you and you just hold them in your heart. I loved everything about it except the 4 hours in the makeup trailer, you know, in the makeup chair, starting at 5 a.m.
Do they work?
You'll see. Tonight I'm gonna let the whole world in. Get a good look at me. Who's the baddest witch in town? I was up at my farm upstate New York and the phone rang and he introduced himself. And I had heard of Ryan Murphy, but I didn't know him. I'd never met him in person, and I wasn't familiar with his work, really. But I just loved his energy and his enthusiasm right from the beginning. It didn't take much to talk me into it. He's heard me say this before, but if Ryan wants something from you, he knows exactly how to get it. And he spun this story of the first season of American Horror Story, and I thought, I'm sitting up here at the farm, you know, why not do it? Why not do it? I always wanted to do like a psychological thriller. It didn't end up exactly of that genre, but that's what he originally promised me, so... But I loved working with Ryan. I love his imagination, and he had great writers writing this stuff specifically for me. And it is a very special way of working when you know the writers understand who you are, your voice, what you like to do, you know, the emotional content and what you're willing to do, and they're crafting it specifically for you. I'm still a little bit caught off guard, you know, when people in obscure places will suddenly recognize me, and I realize that's the power of television. It is there, and they have a sense of familiarity with you that they wouldn't have from film. Well, for me, it was the last season that I did, the 4th season, Freak Show. I loved the character of Elsa. The set outside of New Orleans and this field and all the carnival equipment set up and the tents and the, you know, the seediness of it. It was like a poem to me. It was so beautiful. And the fact that I got to sing David Bowie, you know, it was a, it was a great season.
Fighting in the dance hall.
Well, I'm not a singer, so it was very kind of them to entrust these musical numbers to me. I worked really hard at it, but I'm not a natural singer, so it was fun. It was great fun to try.
You win the election. What do we get out of it? She really loves boats.
Oh.
Specifically those Disney-themed cruises, right? Yeah.
Ryan, at his most seductive and convincing, calling me up, and I know he wants something. I'm not exactly sure what this is going to be, but the idea that it was a comedy, I think that made all the difference, because I'd done 4 seasons of American Horror Story with him, and then Betty and Joan. But this was going to be a dark comedy, and I thought, yeah, I want to try that. I mean, in all my many years, you know, acting, I've only done 2 comedies, Tootsie and then this one. So I thought, yeah, let me try this. The part is so outrageous, and she is a monster. And she's selfish and ignorant, willfully ignorant. And what she does is inexcusable and criminal, but it's also, you know, in the context of comedy.
Think I should kill him?
What? Yes, I do.
And the look, you know, I thought about that going into it, and Ryan and I talked about it. You know, this was a young girl, maybe, you know, as a teenager, and somewhere in some rural West Virginia, poor. I always imagined she was probably abused, and she sees this film, 5 Easy Pieces, and sees Karen Black and thinks, oh, that's what I want to look like. And she creates that look for herself, goes to Hollywood hoping to like become the next Vanna White, and now we're 30 years later or whatever, and this is the character you have. She still looks like she's trying to be Karen Black, but she's, yeah, that time has passed. It was a fun character to play, it really was. I remember the advice Kim Stanley gave me once, because you're in the middle of like all of this stuff going on, and she said, just remember, the work speaks for itself. I would keep that, yeah, very close, that advice. The work speaks for itself. None of the other stuff matters in the long run. The rewards, the awards, you know, the publicity, the success, the so-called failures, whatever. It's the work. The work speaks for itself.